Well, good morning. My name is Patrick Woodcock. I'm President and CEO of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining this morning on a critical topic that's before the legislature that affects hundreds, thousands of Maine businesses. And that's the modern way of communicating with customers. Increasingly, it is imperative that Maine businesses utilize digital tools to be able to attract customers interested in their business. These digital tools have become essential for a Maine business to really survive in this day and age. As we look at any public policy, we want to make sure that Maine businesses are not put at an unfair competitive disadvantage with their peers across the country. Attracting customers is a competitive business, and having the tools are essential for Mainers trying to attract tourists, restaurants attracting diners, and anybody attracting for their shops and businesses throughout the state of Maine. We're very pleased today to inform the public of bipartisan efforts to ensure that Maine businesses can retain these critical digital tools while also protecting sensitive privacy data. This legislation builds on work from other states that have tried to balance the importance of retaining these digital tools and protecting consumer privacy data. Maine cannot be an outlier with this public policy. It is imperative we balance the important key protections of, of data privacy while also ensuring that Maine businesses can compete with others across the country and attract customers to Maine. With that, I'm so very pleased to introduce Representative Roberts, who has sponsored legislation that the Maine State Chamber of Commerce is supporting. Representative Roberts?
Thank you, Patrick. And good morning, everyone. Hoping you can hear me okay and not hear the house bell ringing behind me. So it really is an honor to be on here today because Maine families deserve privacy, but Maine small businesses deserve clarity too. And this bill that we're putting forth delivers both. LD 1224, it's a common sense privacy, but it's Maine style. It's bipartisan privacy proposal built on common sense values, transparency, consumer choice, and business clarity. We looked at what's working in neighboring states and we modeled it to work for our economy and not against it, because our consumers, they deserve control. We should know who has our data, how it's used, and have the power to say no to the sale of personal information or being profiled by algorithms. And this bill gives every consumer control while protecting sensitive data. And that includes geolocation, medical history, biometric data, and children's privacy. We really just want to level the playing field for small businesses. The digital tools out there, they help small businesses reach customers and grow. The LD 1224 ensures the big platforms are held accountable while maintaining the corner bakery, the B&B, and your local mechanic's ability to reach new customers. This bill avoids costly compliance traps and keeps enforcement where it belongs with our Attorney General and not private trial lawyers. We're trying to strike, regional consistency and not experimental law. Other states like New Hampshire and Rhode Island have passed strong and clear laws, and we're following suit here. It avoids making Maine a regulatory outlier, which is a pet peeve of mine. We're not going to be guinea pigs for untested framework that would harm our small businesses and put us at a competitive disadvantage. What we're looking at is enforcement without exploitation. LD 1224 ensures strong public enforcement, no loopholes, no shakedown lawsuits. This approach protects consumers and gives businesses confidence that they're operating under fair, enforceable rules. Over the past 6 years, I've spent my time advancing policy that's incremental, thoughtful, and focused on real-world impact, and this bill is no different. It brings together voices from across the aisle and across Maine, advocates, entrepreneurs, technologists, and legal experts to get this policy right. And the bottom line here really is privacy and innovation are not competing values. They're both essential. And LD 1224 strikes that balance that Maine needs, protecting Maine's privacy and preserving the tools that keep our small businesses alive and thriving where we need them.
Thank you, Representative Roberts, for your leadership on this topic. We wanted to turn to the other side of the aisle with Representative Henderson. Representative Henderson has been a longtime member of the Judiciary Committee, which has oversight of this topic, and we appreciate her thoughtful engagement on a complicated issue. Representative Henderson.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. And to save you all from repeating what Representative Roberts has to say, just a couple points I'll hit home on. One in particular is that this is inherently a nonpartisan issue, right? This isn't about Republican and Democrat. This is something that it's important to drive home this policy and implement a comprehensive consumer data privacy plan that impacts all Mainers and that protects all Mainers. We began this work in 2023. I'm sure Representative Roberts has begun this work longer than that, but I came on board in the early months of 2023. We had a small working group that worked over the summer months of 23 into the beginning months of 2024. And we had, I think it was 18 to 20 work sessions between work sessions and public hearings, probably close to 100 or more hours into working this policy. And I think that just underscores the complexity of what a good comprehensive data privacy plan is. And we had a lot of lessons to learn from that, and I believe that we have the result of that work that was done in 2023 and 2024 is very similar to the framework that Representative Roberts has in, and a bill that I have in as well. I think we both felt it was important to each of us to bring forth a piece of legislation very similar in nature. There may be a couple of commas or colons that are different. That might be the extent of the differences in our bill. But again, just to underscore the value of what this policy brings and that it is inherently a nonpartisan issue. Do want to thank Representative Roberts for her partnership on this. Also the Chamber. This is a bill and framework that creates uniformity, not only amongst other states when it comes to businesses and how we ask businesses to conduct themselves with consumers' information, but it also creates uniformity amongst our neighboring New England states, which it's very important. In 2022, the U.S. Small Business Administration did a study, and the numbers for me were staggering. That just a hair over 99% of Maine businesses are considered small businesses. There's about 151,000 small businesses. Almost 60% of Maine's workforce is considered to be working for a small business. And that's why I not only find it so imperative for us to protect our small businesses and how they conduct themselves with consumers' information, but also ensure that the larger businesses with whom they're getting their marketing information from are regulated in an appropriate manner. So I'm thankful for this opportunity to be on here today and look forward to pushing forward a good quality bipartisan privacy legislation.
Thank you so much, Representative Henderson, for your leadership on this topic, your thoughtful voice on the Judiciary Committee. Maine is lucky to have you in that position. I did want to turn next. We mentioned earlier the importance for the tourism industry. We're always trying to advance more customers, more visitors to Maine. And I wanted to turn to Nate Cloutier, who's Government Affairs Director for Hospitality Maine. Nate?
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, at Hospitality Maine, we represent restaurants and lodging establishments of all different sizes across the state. So we're excited about the opportunity to align with other New England states to achieve that important balance of protecting consumer data while not restricting a small business's ability to be able to effectively communicate their customers. It's important to consider this issue against the backdrop of a critical driver of Maine's economy, and that's hospitality and tourism. Together, they add 16 billion to the state's economy every year and support more than 130,000 jobs. So ensuring that we get this right so that we aren't hamstringing the small, independent, family-run businesses, those are our neighbors and Representative Roberts and Henderson's constituents. They rely on these tools to be able to effectively communicate with visitors and with Mainers so that they can enhance their business. There are some harsh realities for tourism and hospitality right now. The number of visitors to the state declined by 9% in the summer of 2024, and that figure is still not bounced back from pre-pandemic levels. There's international trade implications that have added even more uncertainty for these businesses. So we're excited about this approach from Representative Roberts that will not make Maine an outlier. She's not alone in that pet peeve. There is a big benefit to harmonization with complex policies like these, so as not to make it impossible to be able to communicate with your customers. The alternative, we know, would be further exacerbated by compromising how Maine hospitality businesses market to the broader travel industry, putting them at that major competitive disadvantage. As you've heard, and we'll hear in a few moments, the different models of approach could expose Maine hospitality businesses by picking winners and losers, something we worry about quite often. It would restrict both their ability to compete with larger marketing budgets and would also restrict their ability to notify customers regarding lodging, entertainment, or dining packages, things that have been customary and accepted practices for a long time. Think of the niche Maine Inn experience or the whitewater rafting company that needs to communicate when their peak operation times are. Something like that can change very quickly on a whim, and we need to make sure that we're passing legislation and policy that's mindful of that, and that we're not uprooting these long-standing practices that have been well known and accepted by consumers. Small businesses thrive on effective marketing and advertising. So any approach outside of what we see here from Representative Roberts, we know will hurt these mom and pops and really take them out of the driver's seat in how they communicate and extend their brand. So thank you to Patrick and the Chamber and Representative Roberts for really making sure that we get this one right.
Well, thank you, Nate. To drive into how important this is, we wanted to bring a business that is really focused on bringing these marketing skills to the business community. Many know Pine Point Creative. We're so pleased to have Roy Clark with us today. Roy, can you give us a little perspective on what these tools are and its importance for the Maine economy?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. And I want to thank Representative Roberts and Henderson for this great important legislation too. I represent we have hundreds of clients, small business, and their goals, of course, are in marketing, they have very limited dollars to spend for marketing. And today, with new technology, the playing field has been leveled, of course. And with their small budgets, these tools of reaching a targeted audience is so important. They cannot afford to spend large amounts of money advertising a big blanketed audience. So these tools allow them to market their businesses in an effective way with much lower advertising budgets. And so it's really important that they be able to reach the audience that they're looking for. They don't want to reach an audience that is irrelevant to their business or service. So as we've helped businesses do this, again, we're finding more and more that it's the budgets that they have are just not big budgets. And so this type of legislation is a great way to maintain that ability to reach the audience, the target audience that they want to reach, but at the same time protecting the privacy. Privacy is important to all of us, and I think most people agree that that's a big issue on that side. But at the same time, we just don't want to throw the baby out with the bath and abandon the small, make it difficult for small business to conduct business. So this is important, and like I said, we've seen this with our clients needing those tools. So that's what we appreciate.
Well, I wanted to turn from a specific business utilizing these tools. The beautiful spot up on the Union River, Brian Langley, the owner of the Union River Lobster Pot. Brian, how have you been using these tools, and what would it mean to your business if Maine became an outlier?
Thanks, Patrick, and yeah, this hits right home here. And I really love that this bill by Representative Roberts and Representative Henderson. Representative Henderson, it's really great to see you again. I love that it's a bipartisan approach, because it's not a bipartisan issue. It's one that impacts all Mainers, regardless of their political affiliations. This approach will ensure that our small businesses are able to reach new customers, connect with our current customers, and otherwise maintain the online experiences and marketing strategies that they need, not just to survive now, but to thrive. In my business, which I'm sitting in right now, you can hear some people putting in some new equipment. We're about in the business of creating memories and promoting the Maine mystique and that saltwater frontier. The higher compliance costs that are coming our way under other approaches would cut into our margins, put small Main Street businesses such as retailers, restaurants, and others at a disadvantage to the larger corporations who have the resources to comply with a patchwork approach to regulating data. I have these flashbacks to my early days in business when the Yellow Pages was the only game in town for getting my phone number out to customers. I don't know, many of the people who might be listening to this may not even know what Yellow Pages are, but as a small business person, I rely on cost-effective, turn on a dime, targeted advertising to reach my customers. And my ability to do so under some of the other proposals would be very limited. So just to take this to an example, like today, I'd look outside and I'd see that it's raining. I'd snap a picture of a steaming bowl of lobster stew and make a post. Come on in for a delicious bowl of lobster stew. Now, it's Maine. 2 hours later, the sun comes out. It's 85 degrees. I snap a picture of a lobster roll in a locally crafted microbrew. I make a post. Come on in for a lobster roll and a cold brew. We go from lobster stew to microbrew. It's marketing by the minute today, and we all do it from our phones today. We work hard to market and develop loyalty programs to reward our local patrons. We send out newsletter in the winter with recipes to promote the iconic Maine lobster to our guests far and wide. We make them yearn for Maine. In my world, we're ambassadors for the state of Maine. Under Representative Roberts and Henderson's bill, we'll be able to stay connected to our customers and not only promote our businesses, but the great state of Maine. And that's how I look at it from my world.
Well, Brian, thank you. I look forward every year to my annual pilgrimage to the Union River with my family, and you just made me more excited about this upcoming season. I did want to turn further south to Peter Guidi, who is the owner of the Seagrass Inn. I've heard reports that it was actually a decent weekend in Old Orchard Beach. We've certainly been monitoring the situation in Old Orchard with our Canadian tourism. So far, it's been encouraging to see what we've seen, but it's absolutely essential that we continue to maintain these digital marketing tools. Peter, can you just give a little sense of how important these tools are for your business?
Sure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about digital marketing and its importance to the Seagrass Inn. And we could even dive a little deeper on the specifics. I did appreciate Brian's talk of keeping that continual relationship going with your customer. For us, to a large extent, It's really about developing personal connections with our customers. You know, our goal is to deepen the nature of the relationship between us personally, my wife and I, and our customer, not necessarily even the inn. Our guests, if you read our reviews, and you'll see hundreds of them posted on Google, you'll see a lot of commentary about how we work to build our relationship with our customers. We're in this business because we like people. And so we use a variety of social media tools, Facebook, Instagram, etc., to market our property. We use paid advertising on Facebook. We use paid advertising on Google, and we direct outward advertising. If you looked at our website today, you'd see a note to Canadians, a specific note, talking to them about the circumstances that we're all under, and we've pushed that out to tens of thousands of Canadians. Now, which Canadians? Well, the Canadians that express an interest in coming to Maine, the Canadians who express an interest in coming to Old Orchard Beach. They're the ones who self-select that interest. Privacy, I mean, we could get into esoteric conversations about what consumer privacy really means today. But without digital marketing, I'm just not sure there's any answers. Brian talked about the yellow pages. Early in my career, I owned a company called Guidi Graphics, Portland, Maine. And every year I bought every yellow page book in the state of Maine. And all spring long, I sat down in that book and I opened up the yellow pages and I called businesses one after the other. That's how we did it. I remember buying my first word processor and doing my first mail merge. Things have changed. And information today, I mean, take a walk out to the local restaurant, take a walk downtown and look at what people are doing. They're getting run over because their faces are in their screens. They're on Facebook constantly. They're on Instagram constantly. They're on Twitter constantly. We're not impinging on people's privacy or their data security by contacting them in digital channels. This is where they are. It's how they want to be communicated with. I mean, when was the last time you opened junk mail? You throw it away today. And for us, you know, the chamber, we're a member of the Old Orchard Beach Chamber of Commerce. My aunt and uncle, who have passed away now, own hotels in Old Orchard. Every year, hotel owners got together and they went up to Montreal, and they went to big events where Canadians came in and looked at various motels. That stuff just doesn't happen anymore. We actually see people drive into our parking lot from their phone. They're parked in our parking lot, make a reservation. This is the world we live in. Artificial intelligence is on the way. We're using it today to reach customers. We're crawling through various social media platforms using artificial intelligence to reach people who are doing searches about going to the beach in Maine and trying to get involved with them. So I'm all for legislation that makes sense. I certainly could use less paperwork to fill out, less taxes to pay, etc. But the notion that there's an alternative to digital marketing, or that people who are engaged in the marketplace through digital marketing are not using it for their own benefit, I think is mistaken. People want us there. People want to see this information. And when we don't give it to them, we're doing them a disservice as much as we're hurting our own business.
Thank you so much, Peter, for that insight into how it's been important for Old Orchard, for your business, and attracting a really key demographic group right now for the state of Maine. This legislation is not just about ensuring that we can attract customers to Maine, but also sell Maine to the rest of the country. That's why we brought in Luke Swabster and Shelby McCarthy to give a little sense of what it means from a national perspective of trying to sell our products nationally in this day and age with a competitive landscape. Shelby?
Thanks so much, Patrick, and thank you, Representative Roberts and Representative Henderson, for this super important legislation that is truly strikes such an important balance. At Luke's, we are incredibly proud of our roots in Maine. A huge part about how we market ourselves, not only here, but as Patrick said, across the country, is telling this beautiful, uniquely Maine story of the heritage lobster industry and of our coastal communities. We can do that through modest, regionally appropriate, consistent data privacy standards like those laid out by Representative Roberts' bill. Those things help us continue to be able to tell that story both locally and globally. We are super big on privacy and transparency at Luke's. Transparency is one of our core values, most specifically in our sourcing standards, but that directly translates to how we handle data privacy for our customers. So some things we do to ensure that privacy is upheld is having our privacy policy easily navigable and accessible in the footer of our website. We work to keep that updated and readily available to our customers. They can also access their data and request removal of that data right in the footer of our website. We do this type of work because using targeted digital marketing is a crucial part of our business. And without it, we're not able to share these beautiful Maine stories across the country. Restricting our ability to target specific customers and retain those customers not only harms us as Maine businesses, my fellow Maine business people who spoke today, it also puts consumers at a huge disadvantage and limits their ability to have access to these beautiful Maine products, ideas, and innovations that we all, love so much, and what keeps us working for, the betterment of the state of Maine. So, thanking Representative Roberts and Henderson again for this bill that just strikes such a critical balance in protecting both customer data while supporting, the growth of local businesses. So thank you both very much.
Well, thank you, Shelby. So you've heard from businesses across the state how important it is that we get this right. This should not be an area that we should be cavalier. Maine cannot be an outlier here. There's too much risk for the state's economy. These digital marketing tools are essential for the state's economy. Maine should embrace the bipartisan efforts that you've heard from Representative Roberts and Representative Henderson today and move forward with these pragmatic legislative proposals. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions. I know that WGME is on. If you have any questions, happy to, you just announce who you'd like your question directed to.
I don't have a person in mind, but is this a bill that has come back that has failed previous to this effort?
Representative Roberts or Representative Henderson, you want to take that?
Would you like to, or would you have more? Representative Henderson has more knowledge as far as the committee history. I believe this is a version of what we looked at last session. Ultimately, nothing made it across the finish line because there were, kind of competing versions. But I would defer to Representative Henderson as far as the different, paths and bills.
Yeah, so I would concur with Representative Roberts that this is a version of what came out of the Judiciary Committee, the end of the short session in 2024. I think we went in starting our privacy conversations with 4 bills. We exited with 2, one that was sponsored by a Republican, one that was sponsored by a Democrat. And I think through that, we've really learned our lesson that we can have essentially the same bill and the same message from both sides. And that's what Representative Roberts and I have done here. So to answer your question directly, yes, it's a version of what came out of the committee. And I think it's the better version than what went into the committee, right? So what came out, what effectively didn't pass is a better version than what went in. And then what we have in front of you today is an even better version of that.
I guess I would just follow up with what are the restrictions that have struck a balance that that these small businesses are getting behind?
I'm happy to answer that broadly, but I don't know if there are some businesses here that, like the small businesses themselves, if they'd prefer to answer that question.
Let me start by saying the Maine State Chamber of Commerce supports the Roberts bill and the Representative Henderson bill, is it does allow customers to opt out. It does allow customers to protect their data, but it also allows businesses to utilize platforms to have an exchange of information across these platforms to be able to utilize that information to target their potential customers. To add on to your previous question, there was bipartisan work last year to try to move forward with pragmatic privacy legislation. There was also legislation that would absolutely have placed Maine as an outlier that passed the Maine House of Representatives. So we are the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. This is one of our top issues for this legislature. We were very concerned about legislation that passed the House that would have restricted these businesses to use the tools you've just discussed today. Representative Henderson and Representative Roberts have the legislation we think strike this balance.
Was the opt-out option not there prior to this?
Yet currently, Maine has very limited privacy laws. So there really does need to be efforts to protect sensitive data, minors, elements of demographic information, religion, ethnicity. So there really is an effort that needs to propel us in a bipartisan path to protect that sensitive data. People should not be targeted based on that information. We should protect our minors, but also ensure that we can have information about whether you're interested in a New England vacation, if you're interested in a Maine lobster roll, and we have that information. That's very different data. Any additional questions?
I just make a quick comment on that. What if you're an organization and you were creating, I don't know, remembrance cards for the Pope who's just passed away, or Passover dinner items? Would you be restricted from sending Passover dinner items to Jewish people? I mean, where businesses are are engaged in meeting the needs of consumers, all kinds of consumers, and consumers have preferences, and what if a person has a specific set of interests, that's what they'd like to see. If you go to your Facebook feed and you click on pictures of people doing painting, you're going to get ads from companies that sell painting supplies. If you click on lobsters, you're going to get information about lobsters. People are choosing these preferences on their own. They're the ones putting their demographic information into these platforms. If somebody doesn't want to be any demographic information themselves available, they don't put it in. It's not like we're creating the information or putting the information out there. We're simply leveraging the information that's readily available that the consumer is making available to us. And so I don't know. I just feel like we should do everything we can to service our customers in the best way possible, and that means delivering the most relevant information for them, and that requires information.
Thank you for that. The last question.
I just have a clarifying question. I'm Keenan Mills with WABI. Good morning. So essentially, these bills are seeking to hit that thin line of get that targeted marketing for these small businesses that are trying to seek out the people that want their product that they desire, while also protecting the data of those same consumers and giving them the option of opting out of taking whatever data is available if necessary. Did that make sense at all? I'm just trying to kind of dumb it down to a few sentences of what the effort is.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, and I would just say that it's no longer a thin line. The more states that implement this type of framework, especially in the New England area, this line that we're drawing, between or connecting with the small businesses and consumer data, it's becoming broader. Every year that a different or another state jumps on board and really sees the value behind this framework. If not to get too deep into the weeds of the history of it, but I believe it was Connecticut that first put this framework in, and then in 2021 or 22, and then the following year they had a report back from the AG on what suggested changes should be made. And all of those things that as the states have implemented it and then refined it are things that Representative Roberts and I have adopted in our proposals. We've learned from what other states have done. So this is no longer, we're just trying to create something that works. We're actually getting on board with other states that are taking privacy as a real priority in their states, but also ensuring that their small businesses and businesses can function and can market appropriately.
And I'll just kind of piggyback off that too, in that it's the approach that we're taking to privacy, where last session, I've been in digital marketing for over 15 years, and I had looked at the one of the two bills in the Judiciary Committee and looked at kind of the carve outs and said, but wait, these are the people that would hire agencies like mine. So they're not really exempt. And that created a bigger issue. And I think kind of sparked that discussion. And if you look overall in my district, I'm in a bordering district to New Hampshire. So the effect that would have to businesses in my area to have to try to navigate two different states' laws when you're geo-targeting, where I live, if you hit one town, you're gonna get over the line a little bit. I'm that close. So that could create some real legal ambiguities, which it to me is just it's not responsible or safe for us to do. And that's been my approach dealing with the business community in my committees from day one, is that we don't need to be an outlier.
Thank you. Any last questions?
Just a simple one. Is there a public hearing yet scheduled for 1224 or 1088?
No, the public hearings have not been scheduled. We do expect them in the coming weeks as the legislative session is really nearing the conclusion when bills should be heard and reported out. The bill was just printed, and we wanted to bring attention to the importance of the issue, as this bill is one of the top priorities for the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. And very appreciative of Representative Roberts and Representative Henderson in their thoughtful approaches with the legislation. With that, thank you all for joining us. If there are any follow-up questions, please reach out, and we can certainly try to connect you with the chamber staff with more information or with any of the presenters today. Thank you so much.